had so much attachment in my mind. Living in LA, I'm living this baller lifestyle that I feel this need to project this image to other people or to myself, to my ego.
Your mindset can have you living in the past so much that you bring that into every single moment in your future.
So we have all these mindset hacks and we talk about them on a daily basis, you and I, the guys in our circle, but we want to share this with the world. Mentorship Nation, are you ready to unleash the power within and embark on a journey of authentic masculinity and success in life? Well, you're in the right place. I'm Evan Seinfeld, your guide on this epic adventure, and I'm thrilled to introduce the Mentorship podcast. Every week, we dive deep into the realms of personal development and professional growth with expert insights, inspiring stories, and practical advice. From exclusive Brotherhood interviews to enlightening discussions on authentic masculinity as we redefine it by the moment. We've got it all right here at the Mentorship Podcast. Welcome to the Mentorship Podcast. I'm Evan Seinfeld.
I am Mamadou Mamberay.
And we are the men of Mentorship. We are here coming to you from Posada del Sol.
Here in the beautiful Tulum in the Caribbean. Joined here by the beautiful, all that.
And we have defected from the Matrix. We have successfully unplugged. And we realize that in life, we have some options that a lot of people may not be aware of. You can do anything if you believe it. You can change your life. We are all 1 second away from completely changing our life and having a completely different life. I want to tell the people what is the format of our podcast and what are we doing here? What is Mentorship and who are we?
And for someone who tapped into this from my good brother Evan Seinfeld, who started this, mainly this started from a conversation just among like-minded men here in Tulum in our beautiful neighborhood of Aldea Zama, where we would get together and we would realize, all right, everyone primarily has the same issues internally, but everyone doesn't always have the courage to chase their goals or live out the life they truly want for themselves. So a conversation among friends turned into groups of men joining together every week at Evan's house and finding out that, okay, all of my internal fears really don't exist. And everything I project outward in my life, I'm able to change and live the life of my desires if only I would open myself to it. So we invite men to come together, speak from the heart about issues that you may have grown up not thinking it was okay to do so. Talk about your emotions, talk about your problems, whether they're in relationships, finances, or just your belief system mainly. And, you know, from there, beautiful things can happen.
Yeah, so what happened was on the heels of my third divorce and a myriad of horrible things happening, the universe spitting me out of LA with intention, saying you need to go live in Mexico. My company went under that I was running. I was financially in a wreck. I was in physical terrible health. I was in a spiritual void. I was in a really anxious mental state and I needed to change my life. And the people close to me, my son and my close friends said, you're so happy when you're in Tulum, just go. And the idea of like, I had so much attachment in my mind living in LA. I'm living this baller lifestyle that I feel this need to project this image to other people or to myself, to my ego, whatever. I end up here in Tulum and I started to write a book. The name of the book is Mentorship. That's why we got the name of this. And the idea, the book was, as you know, a guide to help men like us become honest with ourselves about the life we truly want. And then I put together a program for men to put your life on a path of self-development and become the best versions of ourselves, which us guys here in Tulum are kind of already all doing. And out of the conversation about the book, I was very nervous about writing my first book. I wanted to measure up, and I'm a fan of authors like Eckhart Tolle and Don Miguel Ruiz, and I don't want to mention my name in the same breath with these thought leaders, but I want my book
James Allen.
I want my book to read, and I want it to have impact. So I invited a bunch of my friends, guys like Mamadou that I met here on the beach, at the gym, as we do in Tulum, and I asked these guys, could I read a chapter of my book to you and ask you guys to give me some feedback and let me know if it sucks or if it's good. And out of that meeting was the first Circle of Brotherhoods a year ago today, almost. And all the guys started sharing on the different issues that we were talking about in the book, where I'm talking about attachment or the beauty of impermanence or embracing the power of change and how we apply that to our lives. We immediately found out that we all, like you said, Mamadou, men in general, if I tell you what's going on with me, that I'm struggling in my mind with feeling like I'm enough or I'm doing enough, how many other men in the circle go, oh shit, me too? The points of relation are incredible. So we created this safe container for men that Mamadou is referencing, the Circle of Brotherhood, for men to open-heartedly share and be vulnerable. And I didn't grow up feeling safe to be vulnerable. Vulnerable to me sounded like you're weak and you're going to get attacked, killed, and eaten.
There's a stigma when it comes to especially men, that to be macho and to be strong and to be a provider and a protector are your only duties. But the fact of the matter is, once you hold so many of those things on your shoulder, who then looks out for the guy who is the protector? Who then checks out for the guy who is holding on the strength on his head? So it's okay for us guys to know that, it's okay to talk about your emotions. And one of the main things we hear every time we come to the circle is a guy or two will always share that I've never seen a group of men sit around each other and talk about emotions, and in their upbringing it's not normal. So for those of you who may or may not be familiar, a Circle of Brotherhood or a man circle is just like any circle in union where we come together to share what's in our hearts, right? So in a ceremonial fashion, which has been a ritual really for us recently, we open the space and we let everybody know kind of the rules of the container in the space is that it's an ironclad space, meaning you're not going to come and share what's open in your heart and have another man tell your story out to the public. Is something that
confidentiality.
It's 100% confidential, and it's a safe space for you to share what you're going through. And then we usually have a topic that we talk about, and many of these topics are in Evan's book that is coming out soon, along with the Mentorship app. They'll be coming out soon, and these are all relevant topics that help us grow, that help us reflect. And then after we share on these topics, we also open a space to give feedback, where you can hear yourself through other people's lenses in terms of just positive reflection or a point of relation that a person may have with what you're sharing. Now, we are doing this today just to kind of give you an introduction in the background, because we'll be doing the Mentorship podcast and bringing tons of guests here, many friends of Evan, some that are, celebrities and masters of their own right in their own respective industries, others that are wonderful people who are practicing what they preach in their practices that are here in Tulum with us in different places around the world, and then just other men that are a part of our group container. So we are kind of going to do a pseudo interview with each other, just to get each other's inspirations, because this synergy came normally. This is a good brother of mine that we meet and we talk about all these things, and we encourage you to always have a partner, or what we call in our group a mentor, someone to hold you accountable in your goals, someone that when you're feeling low, you feel like you're about to make a bad decision, you can call this person and kind of bounce ideas off of them and let yourself out to. So, and I'm still curious in wonderment every day, because even though I'm a guy who works on myself, it helps motivate me so much more every time I check in or tap in with my friend here, whether I see him, around town or on the beach with his people, or whether I see him on social media. So I'm just curious, Evan, what keeps this drive going to want to bring mentorship mainly to the world, because we know the effect it has here to people, but what's the motivation to really get this out there to the public and take it global?
See, I kind of see Tulum as this kind of the new children of Zion. I say all the time, I make a lot of Matrix references, but I feel like this is the new Babylon. During the pandemic, so many people realized you don't have to live where you thought you lived, and you don't have to work at the job you thought you had to work on, and you could really spread your wings and do something. And there's a conscious community here in Tulum of mindful people who practice meditation and yoga and spirituality and plant medicine, and just genuine, honest people and good people who help each other. There's a sense of community here. And the reason I think it caught fire here in Tulum is because people who are on like a life quest to I'm going to reinvent myself. I'm going to become the best version. I'm going to move to Tulum, Mexico, and take up meditation and quit my corporate job. So we have this community of 300 men in our WhatsApp group that have come to the meeting at one time or another as they come through. And as the guys leave Tulum, they stay in contact, and we started Zoom meetings. So you ask me, how do I find the drive for the mission? Well, this has helped me so much.
Yeah.
Having this circle to be able to share about my fears, my insecurities, my repetitive thoughts that sometimes attack me and scream at me with great authority, and learning concepts like I'm not my thoughts.
Yeah.
And when I talk about being assaulted by a repetitive thought, and someone in the circle goes, wow, I really struggle with the same thing, and I get a point of identification, and I go, I'm glad maybe I was going crazy. I thought I was the only person who has this kind of repetitive thoughts. When we go around the circle, we find out 80% of us have the same thing we struggle with. And I see the desperation in men. I see the loneliness, that when you have to project this strength, that you're the provider and you're the protection and you're taking care of other people, who's taking care of you? During this mission, it came to my attention that 80% of all suicides are men.
Yeah.
This is global. This doesn't matter if you're in Africa or you're in Sweden. America, Europe, it's 80%. What does that mean? Why does this matter? I would gather, and once again, I'm not an extremely educated person other than having lived 55 years and gone to a lot of places and talked to a lot of people. And I've read quite a few books, but I don't think I know what makes people tick. But what's the difference between men and women? We don't share our feelings.
Yeah.
We hold it in. We stuff it down and we say, doesn't work. I'll tough it out. I'll deal with it later. I'll take it on the chin. And a lot of us implode. A lot of us are self-destructing. It comes out in addiction. It comes out in road rage and violence and self-harm and harm to others.
And that's to say, I really look at it as a superpower that women have, because they're able to keep in contact with their emotions, right? So the idea is, if you see a man and we're able to be kind of regal and unaffected by it all seemingly on the surface, but that really, just like you mentioned, bubbles up and blows into energy expressed in other ways that we wouldn't prefer outside of that. So women may be more primal with it, being that they'll deal with the emotion right there. Of course, folks are different people bottle up things differently, but tying that into why this is very important and unique, and how this has been a powerful thing, I find it very fascinating how, if you ask the average person about the average person that lives here in Tulum with us, that when we talk about leaving the matrix, for me per se, it's not about downing, the life that I for myself, I used to be a business person, still I'm a business person, but lived in the US, was very much in corporate, and was very much in that ambition culture that, just felt like more consumerism, and to be successful, I had to, even though my mission was to help people, I had to buy more, I had to have the nicest house, I have to have the nicest vehicle, and I had to have some kind of status symbol to feel like I was enough and I was doing my job. Now, I have a high respect for people who live a simple life. You take care of your family, you love your work, and you love the life that you created for yourself. But the issue is when we're not hyper self-aware that at the end of the day is a choice, and that you're not trapped to that. And I think one thing the pandemic showed many people is when it froze the world and showed you, okay, if you go home, if you take away your job and you take away your weekly mundane habits, who are you beyond that? Who are you beyond your accolades? Who are you beyond the car you drive or the prestige that the people at your workplace give you?
How do you define yourself?
How do you define yourself? And through that definition, are you happy with what you see in the mirror? Many people were caught at home with somebody and look to their spouse like, Jesus, I may really care about this person, but I'm really not happy here. And because I have a wife and children or a business or whatever the case is, I just go about the regular everyday of life and feel like I'm trapped in this. So what is this whole new age idea about of stepping outside of that comfort zone? Which non-attachment is certainly a big part of it, but it's also realizing that the world is your oyster, and to be able to move to new lengths to where you have the courage to live the life you want to live, you have to get around like-minded people that are going to charge your battery, and you have to have the courage to step out there on faith. So one thing that I find fascinating about Tulum, you ask people about their story and how they ended up here, it'll sound very similar to what Evan shared. You know, he lived a great life before. This man is known by millions of people around the world, had great impact, and was one of the largest rock bands that set the stage for what all of the other great rock bands came along and did. Had been in TV shows, has, you know, been all over production and mainstream. Yet he was around this life of luxury and realized there's more, because if I'm living and I'm not connected to my heart space, and I'm not living from an authentic place to where I am comfortable being my most real self to those around me and those to the outside, then there's a problem and there's something I need to do. So our mission is to get everyone to have the courage to step into their authenticity.
And this is the first step that we talk about in mentorship. And the prerequisite to any like positive life change starts with honesty with ourselves. Can you become honest with yourself about the life you really want? Can you say, well, I have this job, I'm 11 years in on this job. We grow great attachment, and we identify ourselves. I'm Evan from the band Biohazard, and I live in this house on Mulholland Drive, and I drive this. I start to believe that's who I am.
Yeah.
You come into this world with nothing, we leave with nothing. The stuff you acquire or you use, do you ever really own? Do you ever really have it? Is it important? I don't know. I thought it really was. I was very attached to my stuff and my identity of myself as it related to my stuff. And I've learned here in Tulum, we are consciousness, we are energy, we are beings. And I've connected and made more deep friendships here in the last year and a half in Tulum than I did in 20 years in LA. And I wanted to share what I'd found, and what is unfolding for me is that life is a journey, not a destination. And that if you are in a process of self-development where you work on your mind, your body, your spirit, your heart space, this is the dream. To be in self-development is, for me, I am home.
Yeah.
And the idea that you're ever there, that is foreign to me now. And I don't work out at the gym because I'm trying to achieve some goal. I work out at the gym as part of my lifestyle because it makes me feel healthy and good in the day that I'm in. And when I have these consistent days, I get incredible results. And then I feel great about myself, and my confidence is higher and higher. And the more I feel confident, the more I manifest in my life. The more, look, this is our first podcast. There's millions of podcasts. People all start a podcast and say, I'm going to make a podcast and it's going to be successful. Now, what is success? Success is really, I don't know.
It's how you define it, but it's also the impact that's made through. And you know, I think along the lines of speaking about self-development looks like many different things for many people, right? So for us within the mentorship container, we try to equate that to mainly a set of tools under your tool belt that will help you best deal with certain issues that come up and certain things that arise that ultimately want to get you to a state of flow in your life, to where you're confident in your purpose, but then you're also pushing always to grow to be a better version of yourself. So, you know, your self-development could be something that you do in ritual, like what your morning routine is. It could be working out. It could be, you know, yoga, which is, you know, something many of us practice here. But it could also be other things that have more to do with self-exploration. When we talk about being attached to this identity of who you are, and then finding out, okay, I can label these things. I can have some of these things as possessions, but they're not who I am. I can have some of these titles as roles I play, but they're not who I am. So if we are at the stage of life where, you know, the world is changing right in front of our eyes, and rules and laws are changing around the world, how important is it to you that, you know, just people in general start implementing self-exploration? Instead of speaking straight to self-development, self-exploration meaning that finding out more about the nature of the human being, finding out more about the observer that's inside of you, the difference between your mind as a tool, your emotions as a tool, and that infinite source that empowers you within. You know, finding out more about what you believe your purpose for life may be. These are golden questions that have been asked since the beginning of time, obviously. But I think there's something to say of new spiritual practices, especially when we talk about plant medicine and all these other healing modalities, which I work with many people here in the Mayas. How important is it that you have seen that kind of move to the forefront against the previous corporate structure of go to school, get this education, work in this industry, and kind of just work towards building?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a time of huge change, and it's hard to see it when you're standing in it. Mm-hmm. But so many people changing their careers, changing the places they live, changing the way that they live. When I lived here in Tulum, I spent half of my day working on me.
Yeah.
And I spend part of the remaining half of my day, I split it between enjoying my life and working on projects that I'm passionate about. I try not to spend time on anything that I don't really care about, because my time is my currency. And we talk about this a lot. And this is one of the main concepts of mentorship, is if you really thought about your life as time. And there's a great book that I read called 4,000 Weeks that I just saw a video from Dr. Peter that he bought some wall graph that had a visual of where he was in his life in the 4,000 weeks. He was a little bit halfway past the middle. What is 4,000 weeks? It's 80 years, más o menos. It's how long a life of a person is. And if you think about your time is finite, not to be nervous about how much you have left, but you need to spend it intentionally. You need to make sure you're doing things that, like you say, are important to you, have impact in the world, and you feel like your time that you're showing your time respect.
Now, I wanna ask you, for us, again, bringing this introduction of this podcast out to you all, the viewers especially, I want to ask you more about the core principles and tenets of mentorship, and how you came about them and how that has impacted your personal life mainly. But also, I want you to touch on a little bit of just about your story of how you've gotten here, and what you would say to the person who's at home right now who feels, okay, I've been working this job for the past 4 years. Yes, I don't like my job, but it pays me enough money to stay. And we hear many people saying, travel the world and go out to this beautiful island and sure, live by the beach and, eat acai bowls and have health be at the forefront and do self-development for the first 5 hours of your life. What do you say to the person who says, well, Evan, I don't have the time to do that because I have 2 children. They have to go to school. I have this job that pays me 55 to 60 grand a year. And that's how we survive. I just don't know no other way. What do you say to that person?
Okay, well, for that person, you have to present the question and say, are you uncomfortable enough with your life that you feel you need to make a change? Do you think there is a job out there that is better for you? Is the fear of the gap in time between I quit my job and I find a new career, is that holding you back? What is holding you back from making this change that you feel you need to make? Of course, you're a father. You're going to take care of your children. You're going to provide. A lot of us live with such an insecurity that I have this job making this money and I'll never find another job. Yeah. Bank on the success. Bet on yourself to win. You found that job, you can find another job just like that. You can find a job better than that. Maybe you could find a job that's fulfilling for you more than the money. Maybe you can find a job where you help people. What you asked me earlier, Mo, what motivates me? When we open the circle of brotherhood and we read the mantra, which we can read at the end of we can recite it together, it'd be pretty cool. Every time there's a new guy in the circle, 50-50, it's gonna come his turn to share and he's just gonna start crying, bawling. Hasn't said a word. We don't even know the guy's name yet. First time a man lands in a safe space to be vulnerable with other men, amazing things happen. I find a level of honesty between men once they realize that no one's gonna share their shit outside of here, where guys start telling things that normally would bring, in my mind, embarrassment, shame, fear of being judged. But guys have said such vulnerable things. And then when some guy says something like, I was a victim of sexual abuse, and 8 other guys go, me too.
Yeah.
And everybody looks around and there's this oh shit moment.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
And
I carry this around as my personal badge of shame or fear.
As if no one else gone through it.
And then
not negating how it affects you.
And then they see other men sitting up tall saying, yeah, I've been through something very similar, regardless of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this moment where people go, whoa, I'm okay.
Yeah. And that's layered, right? Because all of these things are baggage that hold so much weight, whether it's literal or people choose to look at it as weight, to why a person would be unwilling to change or don't think that change is possible to them. And I asked you that question earlier about what do you say to that person, because I think one very key thing that's happening for us as a collective at the moment is that people are starting to get the courage to make this jump. And I think it's very necessary for folks to push through and have this leap of faith to jump, because it's a new paradigm we're in, to where the old paradigm of find a safety net in something that's safe and secure so you don't have to be at risk or so you don't have to put yourself out there to fail, that paradigm has shifted out. So I think one thing that I always think about that we can focus on, within the circle, we hold space for men to really help themselves. But when we're bringing this out to the public now, I think one central thing many people are going to know is, okay, how do I get myself to muster up the courage? One, to believe that a different life is possible for me. And two, not to be fixed in my situation and circumstance. And that comes down to your mindset, right? Because your belief system shifts everything.
And that's what we talk about here in Mentorship is mindset hacking. And that's really what we're doing. Changing our perspective, learning to see the good in all things. And you just said, you have to believe. And the original title of my book was not Mentorship. It was called The Power of Self-Belief.
I remember.
If you believe you can do something, well, you have a fighting chance, because let's say I believe that we, the two of us, can make a very impactful and powerful podcast. Now, if I possess a bunch of self-doubt about this, right? It's going to show in the way I talk about it. Check out my podcast. Maybe it's good. My fucking podcast is shit, motherfucker. My podcast is the fucking balls. It's going to be so great. I will stand in the mirror and tell myself all day long with positive affirmations, you're going to make a podcast so impactful. You're going to touch people, their hearts, their souls. You've done other things in your life that have been impactful. This should be a layup. This should be easy.
So touching on affirmations.
It's Granville.
Touching on affirmations. And there's a reason I'm pinpointing this topic in, and I hope those of you out there are able to kind of hone in on it, because these are all transitions that we went through internally and that we're still growing through. And it's interesting when one thing we talk about often in the mentorship group is affirmations, and how sometimes you can be doing your daily affirmations and you can feel silly. You can feel, I'm a grown man, I have all of this ego importance, but here I am looking at myself in the mirror telling myself I am enough, I am attractive, I will make enough money, I will be successful, I will be accepted by others, etc. But these things are very important, because when you think back to the nature of the human being and the nature of how we create life force energy and how we create things to come into material form from within, I think that is a main ingredient in those that have been able to make the shift into the new collective consciousness, and those that kind of stay in the old fear frequency vibration. And I don't believe it's something we should ever force people to doing, because for the soul who's ready to make that leap, you have to feel the call to do that. But I think it's also important to emphasize that before you go out there and do the physical thing that you think is going to bring you the outcome you desire, it all has to start from within. You can't get nowhere externally if you don't shift that belief system within.
And I was going to say, we talk a lot about the step beyond the power of self-belief is embracing the power of change. And we have this, you spoke very clearly about this, what I call the fear-based mindset, hanging on. I'm going to make enough money this year. I'm going to make it. Mm-hmm. Thinking that we'll never find another job. We'll never find another spouse, partner. You'll never find another buddy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're open, if your heart is open, you will find and manifest all things. It's our job to recognize the signs. And we talk a lot about, I was talking about embracing the power of change, ripping off that Band-Aid. And I believe that fear that we have when we have so much attachment to an idea of where we live or some big life thing, the courage to make that change is the power. It's the faith in the universe, in the almighty power, whatever you believe is your God, is a divine consciousness looking after us. And when we say, I really want to start my journey to become a life coach or a veterinarian or something, but we stay in that corporate job that we hate or that other job that we hate because we don't believe in ourselves. How do we rectify that? We work on ourselves to believe, to learn to believe in ourselves, to train ourselves. You can train yourself to lift more weights. You can train yourself to believe that you can do anything. And once you believe, well, my friend, you can.
Yeah. And, some of these core belief systems and core philosophies are one thing that I like to champion because, personally in my life, I've had many journeys in what you call, when people say spirituality and spiritual awakening, or they look to what you do for, not for a living, but what you do for service, and they say, oh my God, you're very spiritual. I like to remind folks that the very nature of life itself is spiritual. And the very nature of existence itself is spiritual. You can't see the air that you breathe unless you look at it under some microscope and you look at particles, but it's there and it's providing for life. When you sleep, your body has this wonderful technology to heal itself and get you ready for the next day, but you don't have to physically be there to actually put all those things into movement. Well, the same works for the things that you bring into your life experience and your life frequency. And I always like to emphasize mindset because even though it's deeper than mindset, your emotions play a role. Also, it's important to remember that the reality isn't biased. The 3D reality is not biased to what you receive in your life and what you don't. It's divinely set to mirror exactly who you are and where you are in your experience. So in that way, you get to learn as you move forward in life and hit every rung and also graduate from certain levels by choosing your actions forward. So if the reality mirrors where you are, then there's a level of empowerment that comes within that, right? And I think many people go through so many traumas in their life and they go through so many hardships. And even though it's okay to recognize where you might have picked up some tendencies based on how you were raised, what you think your parents might have done right or wrong, what your neighborhood was like, or what opportunities you had or didn't have, at some point in life, you have to take acknowledgement of that and you have to take accountability, because it's very hard to still want to play that victim role and stand in your power at the same time. So, one thing we try to do in mentorship is after we open up the forum to let all the emotions out and everything, and this is something Evan mentions often, is like, okay, now what are you going to do about this? What action are you going to take to stimulate this change? And I don't like to scare people when I say action, because that brings us back to this masculine principle of, oh my God, I need to be strong to be able to do these things. But it's more a matter of being willing to see the possibility of change that will even bring about the solution. Because if your thoughts that you're projecting out there are bringing opportunities into your life, if you're in a fear-based state, you won't be able to see those opportunities when they come along. We already talked about the embracing the power of change. We already talked about the power of self-belief that is critical to your mindset to even know that shifting into a life you want is possible. And embracing the power of change and the beauty of impermanence is one of my personal favorite, because I'm a heavy believer in non-attachment to things. And when I say non-attachment, that doesn't mean you shouldn't care about issues. That doesn't mean you shouldn't love your spouse or love your partner. That just means if you love and are so attached to something to the point where if you lose it, you will then lose yourself, there is a central issue there. And then there's this core idea that that you have to be hyper attached to something to be able to appreciate and love it, which I just don't personally believe. So what's another one of the tenets that you feel is something that's near and dear to you?
They're all so tied together when we talk about practicing non-attachment, and we talk about the beauty of impermanence. life is a long book with many chapters. I remember my first job, my first career, my first girlfriend, my first marriage. Well, then you have your second marriage and your third marriage, and you start to realize, wow, these are just chapters in my book, and these are experiences for me to learn from, and I don't have to be attached to the outcome. I don't have to say this has to last forever. I just have to be present in the moment. So something that we talk about a lot, tenants, is presence in the moment. I'm a big student of Eckhart Tolle and the power of now. I really believe that when you are here and not looking at your phone, when you're here and paying attention and not thinking about what you have to do later, you can have a human experience. You can make a higher connection. One of the key principles of mentorship is living in gratitude, is to be grateful for all things, to be grateful for the opportunity to meet you and make a podcast together, and not just take it for granted, but to say, wow, I'm really grateful that the universe set me up with the ability and the connections and the contacts and the resources to create a podcast where we may be able to help men who maybe feel alone on an island with their problems, with their issues, and maybe they've never thought about the idea of practicing a positive mental attitude as a practice. PMA, positive mental attitude. Learning to see the good in all things, even terrible things. Someone that is in an accident and they die. This is part of life. We are all going to die. I'm going to die, you're going to die, you're all going to die. Memento mori. Embrace this and learn to see your life as a gift, to be in gratitude that life is fleeting and it's finite, and it's some creatures live one day on this earth. We're blessed to get 4,000 weeks if we're healthy. So learning to be grateful and focus our attention and our feelings on what we have, not what we don't have, on what we're doing, not what we think we can't do.
And to speak on that point, and some of us look at it more of a transition, because energy comes and goes. So it is good to appreciate our time here. But I think it's something interesting you mentioned about being present in the moment, right? And for me, that ties directly into the hack of really being able to appreciate the value of your time, because your mindset can have you living in the past so much that you bring that into every single moment in your future. And because of how you've been programmed to think now, you attach yourself to this identity, and now you could be living another 2 years as that same old person you were, just because of your belief system. So there's being present in okay, be here in the moment, don't look at your phone, but there's also presence of mind, being that don't recreate the same fears that lived with you last year today, because it's not going to help you. And at the same time, don't over fantasize or have hyper anxiety, or try not to, about what's coming in the future, because then you're going to be projecting that fear out into the future. So I'm starting to see how all these tie in together.
And they all tie in together because, something I heard in an AA meeting in Lubbock, Texas in 1993 when I was on tour with Pantera. Rest in peace, Dimebag Darrell and Vinnie Paul, my brothers. This big cowboy guy with a big 10-gallon hat. I was sharing about something. I was grumpying about poor me, a rock star on tour. Everything is not as I believe it should be. This is a big thing. The laws of expectations. Learning to live without expectations on others, because they're disappointments that we set up for ourselves. We talk 100%. About this a lot in mentorship. The idea is we have all these mindset hacks, and we talk about them on a daily basis, you and I, the guys in our circle, but we want to share this with the world, because before I heard these ideas, I hadn't heard these ideas, and I wish I would have been able to apply some of these things to my life much earlier on. I wish I would have been more grateful in my life. And I have a lot of gratitude for the moment I'm in today. And when I look back at a lot of the things in my life that seemed like commercial success or financial success or looked good, had a good look, don't know that I was happy. I don't know that I was satisfied. And I certainly don't think I was grateful.
And I think one important thing to note with that, especially many people who've had some measure of what the world may look at as success, is that that's not where your fulfillment and your satisfaction's going to come to in life, especially when we come from a culture of
say
more.
that again, because say that to the people,
Well,
because this is why this guy is a silver-tongued devil right here, and he speaks so. Our first conversation that we really ever had was at Corey Price's birthday party on the rooftop with Antoinette and a whole bunch of people.
Wonderful people, by the way.
And we were having we were talking like this.
Yeah.
And everyone was standing around watching us talk.
Yeah.
People were talking about whatever they were talking about, but I knew in that moment that we had some higher purpose.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's our job as humans to recognize the signs.
Yeah.
Look at the animals. Look at the instincts they have. You know, I watch the birds. My best friend Granville Adams passed away 2 years ago, and he was really connected to nature and the birds. And when he passed away, and I was fortunate to be with him when he passed, I love you, G. Since he passed, birds have been showing up on my terrace, on my porch, in my house. Doesn't matter where I live. I can move my house. I can go stay at your house. The birds will come, and it's showing me. But I watch the birds. They know to come to this tree at the moment the flowers come out on it, and they shake the tree till the flowers fall down. Then they call the other birds, and they all come pick up the flowers, and they jet. How do they know how to do this?
There's definitely a beautiful musical way that the cosmic space, along with the nature, kind of just falls in alignment with itself, and all the other many of the other species, you can say, in their primal nature fall attuned to that. And I believe we have that capability as well. It's just we have more of a power of choice and a power of range. Now, people think that makes us as human beings more intelligent, but I'd say that depends on how you choose to use it, right? Because it depends what programming and what belief system you follow. And I mentioned, just mainly this thought to not attach your internal happiness based on external things, because everything that we come to in this life and that we create externally for ourselves, sure, these are things that we can pick up as we go along, and we can earn more money, and we can have more possessions, and we can make relationships, etc. But I'm a firm believer that you come into this earth with every single thing that you need, period. That when you get here, you are filled with every single thing that you need to live out your life purpose, to live out your life mission, and to be one in tune with the Mother Gaia planet herself. And I say that because in our own personal experiences, and my own personally, I've made a lot of money in my life. I've had degrees, and I've had many people tell me how wonderful I am, and all these things, but that never correlated directly with how I felt about myself. At the end of the day, more pressure and more personal responsibility actually came when more eyes and attention were on me. So I realized, okay, when you start to chase fame and money and accolades for the people that I've seen in my life who've done that, you become bloodthirsty for it. You start wanting more. Then it's never satisfying. I'm sure there's a time in your life coming from Brooklyn and then being a rock star that pushed many different limits. I'm sure before all of that boomed in, there was a time where you thought, gosh, if I just made $10,000, I would be fine and happy.
Listen,
then I'm sure there was a time you thought, gosh, if I just made $100,000. Then you're a man that's been around millions of dollars in your life. Then I'm sure there's a time you thought, oh, if I just make 1 million, then really all my problems would be solved. Yeah. And then after 1 million, what is it? It's like, oh, now I got to make 10 million.
How much I need to retire, right? And
how much do I need to retire?
How much is enough? And, I will say this. The time when I was making the most money in my life was, now that I look back, was the most unhealthiest time physically, mentally, and emotionally for me. The most unfulfilled time. I was just feeding this fear-based ego all day long. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, I had all this cars and money and houses, and I'm laying in bed with heartburn at night, with this poverty mindset of, I'm gonna lose this all and be out in the street and homeless and not have a job, with no confidence in myself, in my security, my ability to show up and replicate success. But it took me to get into my 50s to start to realize the common denominator in all my success or all my failures is me. And if every time I start a new thing, it falls short at this stage, well, what am I doing wrong? Mm-hmm. And if every time I do X, Y, and Z, I have some success, what is the common denominator and what am I doing right? And I found for me, Mama, like when I'm doing something that's rooted in my authenticity, I don't have to think about what I'm going to say. I don't have to prepare for this.
Yeah.
It's coming from the ethos of who I am. And
Yeah.
I wear a tattoo that says authentic, and I wear it in reverse so I see it in the mirror. So I remind myself, Evan, your first success with playing in Biohazard, your dream was to play at L'Amour's in Brooklyn and CBGB's. CBGB's holds 200 people when it was open. My dream was to play there, not even sell it out, you know.
Wow. And that's wonderful to realize.
But I remember playing in CBGB's and being grateful and being happy. But I also remember being on tour in Europe with Metallica, playing to 100,000 people a show as the direct support for Metallica. This is the most coveted like slot that a heavy metal band could play, opening up for Metallica at festivals. And I remember this dissatisfaction, this unfulfillment that I felt with myself because I wasn't living in gratitude. I was thinking to myself, why aren't I Metallica? Why aren't they opening for me? What about me? Why aren't I the big shot? Yeah. Instead of being grateful for the moment. The way you become the top is to be enjoying the moment. It would happen organically.
Yeah.
You have to be in it. You can't be thinking about, but this guy in Lubbock, Texas, going back, he said to me, boy, he said, you know what your problem is? And I looked at him, I said, who the fuck are you going to tell me what my problem is? He says, I've been listening to you moaning and complaining for 20 minutes. You got 1 foot all in the past, all regretting everything in the past and sound like a bunch of depressive bullshit. And he goes, you got 1 foot all the way in the future, projecting a bunch of shit that you think is going to happen. You have no fucking idea, and you got no business pontificating about. And he goes, and you know what you're doing with 1 foot over here, 1 foot over there? You're taking a great big dump all over today. And I was like, wow. Yeah. I am. I am not even present. I am so focused. I am so conditioned to think about the future, and to think about what's coming next. What do I got to do? What do I got to get? What's on my list? What do I got to satisfy? And I love projects and productivity, but when I attach myself to the outcome, I'm already a failure.
And that makes me think about this famous Instagram meme that's going around. It's actually a video of a guy who's saying, I don't know where all these people are running around trying to go, but when they get there, they're going to be sorry. And that's why I asked you mainly, about how you feel about that, and one, in being present. And I mentioned that more success and more external grabs, they're not going to be your source of fulfillment. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't have that, because I believe it's your birthright to have all of the abundance in the world. But I also believe sometimes in our own personal lives, when we don't achieve certain things, it's because if you believe in a higher power, let's just say if God gave you all your blessings, sometimes you might actually fumble them if you're not prepared for them. So,
there's also a sense of sometimes we don't feel worthy.
Exactly.
Because our negative self-beliefs, our core beliefs that we don't, because of childhood of origin, because your parents were hard on you, or they weren't great parents, or you had a teacher.
And sometimes those same things motivate you to be great, right? But how do we get to the point, and this is something I want to reflect out to men out there, because ultimately this is part of the goal, to be able to create the support system and to bring all of these like ideas to the table to help you, one, live in your authentic truth, to help you, two, be able to be comfortable speaking about your emotions and speaking your heart into matters, and three, follow your dreams as a reality. So how do you use these things and create a tool belt, an arsenal, if you will, of rituals, personal practices, and different concepts that you learn to where you can achieve both financial success and physical success and health wellness, because without your health being together, nothing else you gain in this world can really matter. You need that to kind of enjoy yourself.
Well,
right?
It's interesting you asked that. So probably before this podcast is released, and I'm hoping the timing is right, will be interesting to see when someone's listening to this, and the Mentorship Manifesto will be out. And the Mentorship Manifesto, it's the bones of the book of Mentorship. And I've fast forwarded the release of this for the purpose of sharing these ideas with the world. I have a tour coming up with the band. They're going to be traveling around, and I wanted to be able to share these ideas, these principles, a list of books to read that have impacted me and other men in the circle, a list of pillars to live by. If you don't have a set of ethics or a religion or a guide, some ideas like be honest with yourself about everything. Be honest with other people. Be transparent in your life. Do you know I practice transparent honesty in all my affairs? I don't lie about anything ever. I just tell the truth. I find this the most freeing thing, even unpopular truth. Sorry, I broke your microphone. I'll take accountability and responsibility for it. Better than sticking it back in the box and worrying about it. Is he going to find out that I broke his microphone?
Right.
You know, but human nature, often we are afraid of the truth. Sometimes the truth is frightening, but I believe the truth sets us free. And I believe when we're not living in alignment with our truth, we're building up an unhappiness, an unfulfillment, a resentment even with our own lives and ourselves. So a lot of these practices, these rituals that we're presenting as ideas, look, I'm from Brooklyn. I was born in East New York. I grew up in Canarsie. Nobody did yoga.
Yeah.
I do yoga every single day. If I don't do yoga, I don't feel right.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I needed a ritual to get out of my thoughts and to get out of my head and to just learn to connect with my breath. And I believe these things set the stage and the tone for my day, for my moments, so that when I show up to do this podcast, I'm a little bit better. I'm a little bit more tapped into who I really am and a little bit less afraid of sharing my authentic thoughts and feelings. Look, I'm a man. I'm muscular. I'm tattooed. I played a bad guy. I played a killer on TV for 6 years. But I have a lot of fear and I struggle with insecurity about things. And
a lot of love also.
I have a lot of love. I have a lot of energy. I have a lot of drive and motivation. But I shared those vulnerable things about myself because I want to normalize men to be able to say, having a bad moment right now. I'm really afraid of what's going to happen right now with that other man going, oh, you're afraid? You fucking pussy.
Yeah.
Oh, you must be weak.
Yeah.
And I will dominate you and eat you for lunch. I don't think that's the world we live in.
Yeah. Or your mind will do that for you.
I believe we can all become more mindful, more compassionate, more honest with ourselves. This will make us better for each other. This will help us improve communication in the world. This will help men become better with each other in business, become better to the women in our lives, to the children in our lives, to the people that count on us to show up and not be toxic and not be taking out my resentment about what my life isn't because I didn't take the chances to make it better on people who are close to me, who are counting on me for support, but they're getting rage, they're getting resentment, they're getting anger. And people aren't doing other people a favor by staying in a bad marriage, by staying in a bad job. They're just becoming a time bomb. And, you know, you can love, sometimes, you know, so many men go through divorces and they're not living in the home with their children, but you can love your children a lot more sometimes if you're not in a toxic environment where you're in arguments with their spouse, with their mother, and you're the father. You can sometimes get yourself right. Put the mask over your own mouth first. Learn to breathe. And then you can show up for those kids as a father, as a strong man, and set the example. Say, you know, son, I had to make some changes in my life, but I'm going to show up for you and I'm going to be accountable. I'm going to be responsible. And I don't have to fit in the mold of everything else. And that's okay.
And I think that's what ties into the main purpose of why, particularly why I'm passionate about opening a space for men to come explore. Because in here in Mexico, I personally work with a lot of men and women. But
explain
in
how you work with the
situations,
people, because I know your story.
Yeah.
But how did you transition from, you know, business and finance, corporate America, to serving plant medicine and helping people along this journey of discovery and awakening?
Well, so certainly in other podcasts to come, we will open up all of these topics and talk much in depth about exactly what we do here. But some people out there, some of you in the audience may have heard of different plant medicines that help people to have a internal spiritual experience, a heightened spiritual experience, such as ayahuasca, such as bufa alveria, such as kambo, such as temazcal, such as cacao, such as even psilocybin for some people who work with the sacred mushroom. And, you know,
I've been microdosing mushrooms for 4 months now.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it has a way of, one, showing you what's in the subconscious and bringing that to the surface. And then also it increases the neuroplasticity in your brain to get away from certain thought patterns that are tied to a lot of trauma triggers that we have. And then it turns you into a 5-year-old sometimes to just make you appreciate the beauty of life and see your relation to the nature that's around you. And many different plant medicines have different functions, but mainly with many of the men that I work with that come into space, for many of them, it's the first time of you really stepping into seeing that there are multiple dimensions around you and stepping into seeing what's really lying dormant in your body stored as energy, right? Because we think just because we're not thinking of something consciously on the forefront of your brain, it doesn't exist there. Well, this sophisticated vehicle here is the best record keeper there is. So you can have something happen to you at 12 years old, and because of that now, at the age of 30, 40 years old, you have the same knee-jerk reaction to some problems you're having. But one thing, even in that space where people come and they have a heightened, enlightened experience, I still think it's necessary to have more integration spaces where people just come and talk out their feelings and experiences. So everything Evan's talking about in terms of, you know, just things you may believe about yourself, or not having the courage to step out of situations that you're in, whether it's family-wise or job-wise, to really start to move towards where you want to be in life, or at least start to explore what that looks like for yourself. It all ties into starting to open up about it. Being silent and suffering in silence and kind of just holding those issues in. Many times you may not have a choice, right? Because you may not have a community where you live that express these things, to champion in it. But
how come women don't shoot up schools?
Yeah.
I've never even heard of that.
Yeah.
I don't have the answer to that, but it's an interesting question. And we will
we will.
When you talk about all of this transformation and this change, sometimes it's just as simple as, how many men do you know that don't take care of their physical health? They don't go to the doctor, they don't go to the gym, and they say they don't have time.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't take care of your physical health, you're not going to have time. Yeah. You're not going to have 4,000 weeks. You might only have 2,000 or 3,000 weeks. And me, I want every week. I want every moment. I savor my life like a delicious meal. You know, I learn a lot from your perspectives, Mamadou. You're a person who you have a very, very different mindset, and I don't believe that you had this same mindset before you went through this transformation. I mean, I believe it was probably always there, but I don't know, were you always in touch with these ideas of flow? And I don't know, like what I'm trying to say about like the physical health, when you take care of yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, when I share about my problems and I go to the gym and I do yoga and I meditate and I do breath work, it takes a lot of my time. But man, the rest of the day I feel centered and I feel connected to my purpose and my passion, and I'm not confused about what I want to do. If I have to work on myself for 6 hours to get 2 hours of
self-care comes first. 100%, and it takes you all the way. And I like to think, when we're born, we are who we are in a sense. So, and I believe that about many to all of us, and that's a question of nature and nurture. But I was always that same person in the space. It's just my environment didn't attune to it very well, right? So it led me to do other things.
Please share.
And I was born and raised in the Gambia, West Africa, in per capita the third poorest country in the world. I had very, very good, parents who did well for themselves, but we also lost everything at the age of 8 due to a coup that happened in a country where the military took over the government. So, my mother, who is a hero of my life and many other people's story, ended up, saving 50 plus children's lives by taking them out of a war zone into a safe zone, and ultimately brought us to the United States to make for a better living. But even after all those transitions, and then growing up in the U.S., where, you know, you could say we had great opportunity to have a good education. I was always an athlete. I played sports. Still, after graduating college and getting degrees and working in corporate finance and working as a financial advisor and then starting a business to help people, even though I found fulfillment in many things I was doing and I was able to make a good life for myself, I still knew, no, there's no way that we have to wait until this life is over to find out the answers about some of the spiritual natures of the things that we live and breathe every single day. So, you know, that's a deep topic we can sort of touch into, but I think it's still a good way to open up all of these conversations, because self-development has many layers, right? So sometimes even before we get to explore those deeper topics, us as men especially, we have to start to even explore the range of our own emotions and what that looks like and how we identify with that. So in short, we will have many other podcasts to come with many other wonderful topics, but I want Evan as a finisher to kind of reel us in to talk about the mentorship app that's coming up, exactly what this app's function is going to be and how this is going to tie into where you as a man sitting in, I don't know, Arizona, India, Switzerland, Russia, wherever in the world you are in, can come within the same safe container and community and connect with men on similar topics, which will then be able to give you that safe space to not only express yourself and connect with other people, but then start to build on the self-development yourself.
So the plan is release the book, release the okay, let me start that question again.
The manifesto
first, then will be the book and the app simultaneously. So the app will be the mentorship app is being built right now. It's a social network. It functions a lot like Facebook or Instagram. So every man can have a profile. If you're a mentor, Mamadou and I are mentors, we will have in our profile what we specialize in, what our areas of interest are in, and what our life experience in. And what is a mentor? A mentor is another man who's willing to guide you and hold you accountable based on his life experience and what he's learned. And guess what? He's doing this out of his heart because he's going to mentor me, and I'm going to mentor Matthias, and maybe Matthias is going to mentor you. And we all help each other out, lift each other up. We're another set of eyes, another set of ideas, a new perspective. What do I do about this thing with my boss and my job? I don't know what to do, and I don't have anybody to talk to about it. Well, I'll throw it up in the circle of brotherhood. So the app will give everybody access every day to live in-person men's circles that we call the Circle of Brotherhood. And this is our safe container for men to be vulnerable. We've been doing this for a year here in Tulum, and it's helped us all immensely, not just build deep friendships and bonds, but grow personally, internally, move past a lot of our fears, problems, phobias. I'm working on 10 things with 10 guys who said, hey, I heard you share about your fear of this. I'm going to help you. Come with me. It's incredible. So we are going to open this container to the world. So right now we have a meeting every Sunday morning on Zoom. Last week we had two guys from Europe, 2 guys in America, a guy in South Africa, a guy in Australia, a guy in Mexico. And we were only like 7 or 8 guys on the meeting, but we were representing 4 continents. And it was pretty incredible. It didn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter your socioeconomic status, your race, your religion, your profession, your belief system. We find out every time we share from our heart, we're a lot more alike than we are different. And that is the ethos of why this is so essential. Guys come to the circle and they all say the same thing after the first meeting. Guys pull me aside because they heard about this on Instagram or in a WhatsApp group here in Tulum, and they always seem bewildered. They go, this is so needed in the world. How does this not exist? How have I not
they're
had
surprised that this is a thing. You know?
And I was surprised it was a thing. I didn't know this was a thing. Guys, we're here to tell you, Evan and Momo, this is a thing. We need to share as men about our emotions. We need to share about our feelings. We need to share about our hopes and dreams, our fears. We also need to share about our successes, our victories, our tools, our coping mechanisms, what works for us. Because when I share with you what works for me, maybe it'll work for you, or maybe you'll just be inspired to know that every problem has a solution. And sometimes it's as easy as acceptance being the answer to all my problems today.
And with that said, we hope you join us very soon. Again, by the time this podcast is out, hopefully by that time, well, not hopefully, most certainly by that time, the book will be out, the app will be out, the manifesto will be out, and many other podcasts will be coming to you with many wonderful guests, some of whom you know, and some of whom hopefully you'll get to know, that you'll get to learn a lot from. And
celebrities,
aside from that,
athletes, thought leaders, actors, cool motherfuckers with interesting stories, people walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And we hope that this podcast truly inspires men around the world to take a deep look and become honest with yourself about the life you want, and join us in our circle of brotherhood. Join us in our podcast. Get the book, get the manifesto, Mentorship. Follow us on Instagram at Mentorship Official. You can follow me at Evan Seinfeld.
You can follow me at _Mandinka_King. Mandinka is MANDINKA_King.
I wish I had a cool name like Mandinka King. All right, I'll come up with a new stage name by next time. So for Mentorship, I'm Evan Seinfeld.
I am Mamadou Mamberay, live here from Tulum, Mexico.
And we are going to close with the mantra that I know you know as well as I know.
Of course.
Well, let's say it together, okay?
100%.
1, 2, 3. I am a man. I am committed to walking the path of self-development and being the best version of myself. I acknowledge the value of my authentic self. I am strong, I am confident, and I am free to be myself in all situations.
When self-doubt creeps in, I'll reach out to my brothers in mentorship to lift me up. Time is my currency. Love is my intention.
While I know in my
heart I am strong,
I acknowledge we are stronger together
as a community in brotherhood. That's right. Tell me I got to work on that.
Until next
time, we are coming to you with all the wonderful topics, podcasts, guests you're going to love to hear from. Tap in with us. Look out for the app that's coming out.
Peace. Time is your currency. Spend it wisely, brothers.